We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. I was not very much of a home theater person this week. I watched like nothing. I'm trying to think. I think I watched one TV show. I watched maybe the last two episodes of AP Bio, which sadly are the last two episodes of AP Bio because they canceled that show.
I could not get into season 2.
Really?
I was loving season 1 towards the end of it.
Yeah.
And then season 2, I watched like the first 2 or 3 episodes. I was like, nah.
I still enjoyed it. I'm sad that that show is going away. Who knows? Maybe it'll get saved in today's crazy age of other networks and stuff picking up shows. But AP Bio, one of those lost gems that gone too soon. They're also ending The Good Place after season 4.
Oh, yeah? I haven't finished season 2 yet. I need to get on that.
Good shows are going away.
I've for whatever reason, I decided I was going to catch up on Supernatural. I'm like 2 seasons behind. So I finished one whole season. I'm halfway through the second.
Okay. Well, the coming season in the fall will be the final season of Supernatural.
Dude, these guys who started this thing when they were like babies.
I know.
You see like some of the flashbacks. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah. I am anticipating that in the final season they will actually meet literal Jesus Christ, because is that not the only thing they haven't done in Supernatural? Is meet literal Jesus Christ? I mean, they met literal God. So yeah, well, exactly. They tried. Well, I guess spoilers, but they tried to shoot literal God. So yes,
yeah. A couple times. Whatever. Season 3 of Jessica Jones is out. I watched the first episode. It was fine, I guess, but I have high hopes for this because they knew it was going to be the last season, so they can go out in the bang. I watched Captain Marvel.
Oh, good.
Got that for Father's Day.
Oh, nice.
So that was fun.
Yeah,
that was fun. Yeah,
there you go. All right, that's our home theater viewing.
All right, let's go to this podcast. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Go to www.avrant.com and leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant Podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant. Hit up Rob directly at rob@avrant.com. His Twitter's at FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter's at avrant_Tom. Listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, to support the podcast in some way, one of the ways you can do that is going to www.avrant.com. Click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. So we want to thank, for a PayPal donation, I want to thank David and Steven for doing that this week. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, David, Steven, thank you very much for those PayPal donations.
Also, thank our 82 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon's a service where you can sign up for like a monthly donation to the podcast. Minimum $1, a maximum of a bajillion. So, yeah, we got 82 of you guys and gals, so thank you very much.
Indeed, that's patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation to us. And thank you very much to our 82 patrons over there.
And if you want to support us in any other way, just let us know what it is, and we'll mention you on this podcast. I do want to mention that you're going to hear this noise. That's my coffee cup.
Alrighty.
It's spill proof, and if I don't click it, then it falls over real easy. I mean, it falls over real easy no matter what, but if I don't click it, it falls over and
spills. Yes.
Right. So all the actual coffee cups in the house are dirty because my children are home.
Even the M&M one?
The M&M one is, I don't even know where that is. It's not in here. I don't know where. It's got to be in the dishwasher, but the dishes need to be run, and I haven't done it yet. So, yes, this is my life. All right, let's get to the news here. Samsung's The Wall Luxury will be available in July. So micro LED displays for the home market are a real thing in 2019. No prices mentioned because if you have to ask, you can't afford it. That was actually what you wrote.
Yep.
The pixel density remains the same as the commercial version, so you can get a 4K resolution 146-inch version or a full HD 73-inch version or an 8K 292-inch. So they don't change the
192 inches.
To get the proper number of pixels, you got to change the size, not the density.
That's right. So it's this modular display, but the modules are the same no matter what. So you can get a 73-inch size, which is not, enormous, but it'll just be full HD. It'll be 1080p resolution at that point. Then you put 4 of those 73 inches together to make a 146-inch display, and it's 4K. Or you take 4 of those 4K displays and put them together, and now it's 292 inches at 8K resolution.
Right. A friend of mine works for a company that does software like customer management software, and he was working with a company that is up in like Philly maybe, or Minnesota, I don't remember, but they installed some sort of like 27-foot diagonal screen, micro LED screen, I'm sure is what it was, in some bar, and they all went there to this bar to go have lunch, and he says it was like going to lunch with 20 me's. He's like everybody was like, I can't believe they're putting DirecTV up there. That stream is so compressed. Look at the artifacting. It's terrible. It's a travesty that we would install
27-foot screen.
I mean, you're sitting pretty far away from it. It's not like it's right there, but still, they were pretty upset, which is hilarious. Value Electronics is somebody I've never heard of, held their annual TV shootout, where the Sony A9G OLED was crowned the king of TV for 2019.
Yeah, this is an annual thing. They do it at CE Week. There were, over, of course, on AVS Forum, some criticisms. Some criticisms on the way that this was conducted. Although I do have to agree on the people who were saying they didn't entirely give Samsung's Q90 QLED television a completely fair shake. Now, you can make the argument that when you're going for, let's try to make this look as similar as possible to Sony's BVM X300 30-inch mastering monitor, which is the tiny little display in the middle there. And that was one of the things. How close can it get to that? Okay, you want to see how close you can get to that. And the Samsung Q90 wasn't able to, because by default, it doesn't exactly follow the HDR10 EOTF, the electro-optical transfer function. It doesn't follow it perfectly. Samsung has chosen to make theirs a little bit brighter. And they did all the calibration necessary to get it in line, but that meant sacrificing quite a bit of detail, both in the bright and the dark, to get it to follow that curve exactly. So people were saying, hey, one of the tests was normal daytime viewing, not how close can we get. And they didn't allow the TV to just kind of do its native thing. They still forced it to follow the curve. And I'm like, yeah, that's a fair enough criticism. Because people were like, yeah, for the daytime viewing, that thing probably should have won. But somehow an OLED won even that section. Anyway, that was one of the criticisms. But I don't really care. These are all flagship TVs anyway. And yeah, that's great. And OLED won. It's won every year since OLED came out. So there you go.
Big OLED is clearly.
Yeah, that's right. All one manufacturer of actual OLED panels.
Big OLED, man. They're watching you through your TV. All right, Dan. Dan wanted to mention that Tableau is another option for over-the-air DVR, including for Canadians. It's quite similar to our HD Home Run. The Tableau tuners are a network tuner, so you can use an app on your smart TV or streaming box to actually watch the content, but Tableau offers a couple of differences. For one, you can plug any USB hard drive into your Tableau tuner. HD Home Run requires that your storage is plugged into your network. And they offer automatic commercial skipping. Their guide service is a bit more expensive, though, $50 a year. In the USA, $60 in Canada. And the Tableau tuners are a bit more expensive than the HD Home Run tuners as well. So there you go, another option.
It is another option. I went for the least expensive one when giving out the recommendation.
Which is what we do here.
Tends to be what we do, as long as the least expensive option works all right. And by all accounts, the HD Home Run stuff and the HD Home Run DVR service works all right. But no, I mean, no harm. If you're like, you tried HD Home Run and it wasn't working great for you, here is an alternative that is a similar idea. The tuner sits on your network. You plug your HD antenna into that tuner, and away you go.
All right. I have to be out of here at noon, so we're going to start powering through the questions right away.
Yes, we are.
So sorry, I guess. I guess I'm not sorry. Sorry, not sorry? I don't know. All right, Johnny. Johnny is trying to recommend a receiver to a friend of his. This friend is currently running a 7-channel setup and wants to keep it to that. But he's also toying with the idea of Atmos, so apparently he doesn't understand how these things work. So he doesn't want to be hamstrung if he decides he wants a full complement of 4 overhead speakers. Johnny immediately thought of either Marantz or Denon for accessories for less, but $700 or more for one of the 9-channel models is a bit more than his friend would like to pay. So he doesn't want Atmos. Well, we can just go with that. Is there a 7-channel model that can be later can be expanded to 9? There's got to be an Onkyo, right? I got to believe the Onkyo.
Not so much. I mean, there's 9s that can be expanded to 11. You don't find very many 7s that can be expanded to 9
Oh, you mean
anymore.
with he means with tuner with external amps.
That's right. Yeah, like it starts with 7 amps built in and can be expanded to 9, but not 11. So there were some models going back several years that were that configuration. They had 7 built in, could be expanded to 9 total speakers. And actually, over at Accessories for Less, it says last one as we're recording this. So by the time you hear this, who knows? But they do have Marantz SR6010. So it's going back to that.
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, going back to a 6010. They have that listed for $600, so that is less than $700, but it tops out at 9 speakers max. It begins with 7, it tops out at 9 for $600, so only $100 cheaper. So I'm not sure, given what we're going to recommend next, that that's really the best option.
All right. So what's the least expensive option to either start with 7, expand later to 9, or start with 9, expand later to 11? Since we already said there's no 7 to 9.
Except
really
for that,
available,
going
except
old.
for that one, the $600 one. That's when we get into some of those Onkyos. And
yep, here comes Onkyo. Actually, pretty much all Onkyo. So I mean, so there's a couple of options where they start with 9 and they end with 9. And not only that, but it is 9 internal amps with no option to use external amps of any kind, except for subwoofer output, obviously.
As long as you don't get any sort of crosstalk or or noise and noise floor raising because of it, should be fine.
So those are the least expensive ones that do that, which are the Onkyo 787 in the regular lineup, which over at Accessories for Less is going for $350 now,
considerably less than $600 from.
Ridiculously cheap. I mean, when it was $500, like it was $800 brand new when it first came out, and when it was $500 over Accessories for Less, I was like, holy cow, that's a terrific deal. Now it's down to $350. So that one does have the THX Select certification, $350, 9 amps built in, no way to add external amps. Now, if you go up their rung to their RZ series, there is the sister model to the 787, which is the RZ630, which is like identical in almost every way. It's also $350. It also has 9 amps built in. It also has no way of expanding or even using external amps of any kind. The weird thing is they dropped the THX certification in the RZ630, but added a Zone 2 HDMI output. So pick your poison. If you'd rather
that's quite literally, neither one of those things excite me anyway. So
well, they're the same price, so if either of those matters to you, hey, pick whichever one. So then you would go up in the lineup, right? There's the RZ730. That one goes for $420. At the moment, they're out of stock, but they'll probably get more. It has 9 amps built in, but it has a full complement of pre-outs, and it can expand to 11. So for $420, that is the least expensive one that can be expanded later on from what it comes with out of the box. And then there is the step above that, which is the RZ830. They actually have a $500 one brand new, which is a heck of a deal, and it comes with 9 amplifiers built in, but a full set of pre-outs and can expand to 11. So you're going to be getting an Onkyo.
Okay. So what you're suffering, what you're really losing here is room correction.
Yeah, I mean, they've got
basically
Accu EQ Advance, which does at least let you take multiple measurement positions now. It isn't just the single measurement position of original Accu EQ. Yeah, that's what you get.
Yeah. So what 2-channel amp would we recommend if he decides to expand to more Atmos speakers in the future? Well, he's going to get the one I have, the APA 10.
It's now the APA 102. In fact, it's the APA 102 Bluetooth. They've added Bluetooth to the thing now.
It can amplify Bluetooth signals? Amazing.
Directly. I mean, you can connect to it with your phone directly and just play something straight off your phone right into the amplifier.
I mean, as long as you didn't hook them into the top middles, it would actually...
That would be kind of fun.
It's like, what's the voice coming from the ceiling?
But yeah, that's $110 from Parts Express for that Dayton APA 102 now Bluetooth version. If you're like, I can't stand the idea of a Class D amplifier, it's 60 watts per channel. Class D amplifier is that APA 102. There is the Audio Source Amp 100. That is a Class AB amplifier. You can get those over at Amazon for about $140. So it's a little bit more expensive, but not insane.
For Atmos speakers, Class D is going to be just fine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you said now that the focal bird speakers are gone, what's a nice, affordable, on-ceiling set of speakers that would be good for Atmos? This guy's not going to want to spend very much money, so he's going to be looking, because I'd be basically anything small, and the NHT Super Zeros are like $100 and something.
Yeah, $125 each, so $250 for a pair.
So those would be super. They would actually be super overkill for Atmos, but they are small, easy, have a mount that you could mount to the ceiling and easy to place. The prime elevation speakers, if he doesn't want to go directly on the ceiling, if he wants
those
to go
are
off the
definitely
side.
more expensive, though.
Those are definitely more expensive, yeah.
Yeah, so over at Accessories for Less, they are carrying the full Boston line of speakers now. So Boston,
do they have those little weird square ones?
Yeah, the Soundware 4.5s. And
just be aware that some of those speakers are a lot bigger than you think they are.
Well, the 4.5, it's a 4.5-inch driver in there. So this is not some tiny little 2-inch cube. I'm showing an image of it so you can see the little ball socket pivot mount, very easy to mount, but it is not some teeny tiny little computer speaker with like a 1 or 2-inch driver. That is a 4.5-inch diameter driver inside of there. So it is bigger than you might think from looking at the picture, but they're only $70 each. So $140 for a pair of those, and they have the same type of form factor as the Focal Birds used to have, or actually the Focal Little Birds. They're very similar to the Little Birds used to be. So those would be a good recommendation.
Yeah, I was at Boston Acoustics when they announced those speakers, so I've heard them, and they can actually they've got like a trapezoidal or weird shaped back. The idea is that you could mount them directly into a corner.
Yes,
and still get the speaker wire in there, and it's not like a square speaker.
Yeah.
So the back of it actually has kind of, I don't want to say a cone, but almost like it has angles to it, so you can kind of like tuck it up into a corner. Yeah. If you really wanted to. Which their idea was for distributed audio.
Sure.
But it would also work now. That was before Atmos was a thing. So yeah. All right. Thomas. Not me, different guy. Thomas wants to purchase a new home theater and stereo system. He wants to do it right the first time, and you cannot afford to mess it up and regret what he has purchased. Life's full of regret, Thomas. Sorry, dude. He's going to start with a 5.2 setup. He might consider expanding to 7.2, but he really doesn't envision doing anything more. No, none of us did, and yet here we all are. He was very impressed with the Audioholics review of the flagship Marantz SR8012 receiver. Gene bench tested it and produced a genuine 100 watts per channel, 7 channels driven. He's smitten with that big toroidal transformer, which seems to be rather rare in AV receivers, but the SR8012 has way more features than he'd ever used. And he likes lower volume levels anyway, so the sort of listening levels where you could still talk to someone sitting next to you. Then you don't want surround sound? You don't want to watch the movies?
Well, you don't need
I
all
watched
the
Captain
power.
Marvel with my 9-year-old son who wouldn't stop freaking talking, and I did not want the people talking volume levels next to me. He about ruined that movie for me. I'll be honest with you. I have to watch it again with him not in the room because it just absolutely. I had to stop it like 7 times to yell at him, and I mean that in the way that you have to fuss at your children when they're spilling popcorn all over everything. Yep. That kind of, So furthermore, he always sees other audio reviews where they claim these speakers really didn't open up until I connected the dedicated amplifier. Those reviews are full of lies, so don't read those.
That's some hogwash there. You know what you could do? Turn up the volume dial a little bit. Oh, they opened up.
They opened up. Oh my God, it's the most open.
But this is where I always set my volume dial, and there's no way I could move it from this spot. Really silly. No.
So would he be better served getting, say, a Marantz SR5012 and adding a Peachtree?
I don't know why it's a Peachtree Nova 300. I don't know why that would have to be the amplifier, but that
would be the amplifier.
That's the one he
stick with the
said
Marantz
he's thinking of.
SR8012, or should he consider something else entirely? You should consider something else entirely.
Something else entirely. I mean, not that the SR5012 all by itself would be a bad choice. It certainly would. Yeah. It seems as though he's favoring Marantz, which might just be the external looks of the things, because, I mean, if you're like me, I do like the way they look on the outside better than a lot of AV receivers, but that's pure aesthetics.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, so we don't know how far away you're sitting. We don't know what speakers you're going to choose. We don't know anything. Yeah. So we can't really tell you what receiver to get for sure. But let's just talk generalities. We do know that like
really loud output is just not his goal, and more than 5.2 isn't really his goal. Okay, 7 might be a stretch.
Right. So, I mean, all the receivers we listed for the last dude, the Onkios, would be more than enough for you. That would be
way more than enough, because those were all 9-channel models. He doesn't need that.
Well, he doesn't need it, but I mean, for $350, I mean, it's almost hard to spend less money to get fewer channels.
Yeah, that's true. But I was thinking actually spending a little bit more to get better room correction. That was where
that
I was
would be
heading.
okay. Yeah, you could go for a whatever the entry level Denon Marantz is that has
XT32.
XT32.
That would be the X3400H over at Accessories for Less is $450. And I think that is a stellar choice for several reasons. One, it's everything you need and actually a little bit more, but it does top out at 7 speakers, and we know that's the max you're thinking of topping out. I am convinced it has ample power all on its own to power whatever you want, but I would say get it first and try it. And then if you're like, I have to have an external amp, I just can't live without one, well, it has a full set of pre-outs. So you can add an external amp anytime you want. You are not limited in that way. Do not get an external amp immediately. Try the X3400H all by itself. I'm convinced it's enough. But hey, if you need to, want to later, it's capable of it. So it's not limiting you in any way. The price certainly works. You do not need an SR8012. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a fantastic receiver. It's a fantastic receiver, but it's massive overkill for what you describe.
What does it do, like 11 or 13?
It has 11 amplifiers built in.
And he wanted to get an external amp. All right, so let's just talk about generalities here. So, you know, what you need to do as a buyer is not worry about whether or not something has enough power. Generally speaking, it's just almost never the case that power is really the issue. Power is the issue that people who are selling you amplifiers and receivers are trying to make you think is the most important issue. It's not. It's not even close. It's like, you know, there's so many other things that are more important. And really for us, the most important thing is that you have the proper feature set and you have good room correction. It doesn't have to be our favorite room correction. It just has to be good. And that's what we care about. Maybe you don't care about that. You probably don't care about that because it's not something you've really thought about or had experienced. But we're telling you it's more important than whether or not you have 100 watts into 7 channels, because it is in almost every single case. So, you know, that's what we're worried about. So that later on down the line, when you're saying, oh, my bass sounds uneven, or, you know, things, I can't really hear the dialogue, or blah, 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 we can now have tools of which to fix that. Playing at, you know, reference volume at your seated location has everything to do with how far away you're sitting from your speakers and how efficient your speakers are.
Yes. If
you are going to buy normal-ish speakers, you can sit within 12 feet of them, and your amplifier within almost any AV receiver will do just fine.
Yeah, and it doesn't sound like he wants reference volume ever anyway, so you could probably sit 15 to 20 feet away with an AV receiver and be totally fine.
So reference volume is like peaks of what, 105 or something?
105 or peaks, yeah, that's full reference volume.
And that would be, I can't talk over this. In fact, my children might cover their ears when it happens.
And that's where you could need a genuine, very short-term peak of maybe 4 or even 500 watts. It's possible that could be required for full reference volume, but that's not what you're doing. So, no. Start with the X3400H, and then everything is open to you at that point. You can upgrade from there if you really, really want to.
Yeah. All right, Rob on Facebook. Rob set up his first projection screen. He put his front 3 RBH Impression series speakers behind the screen. That was 2 series in there. But with his much larger screen side, he now has his row of 4 recliners only 2 feet off the back wall. Where should he put his surround speakers? He could easily put up a shelf on each side or 2 shelves on the back wall. He was thinking that any such shelves should be about 2 feet above his head when he's sitting down, which will provide a clear line of sight to all seats. Should the surround speakers then be turned to aim towards a primary listening position? And should they also be tilted downwards? Are there any dedicated wall mounts that would allow fairly large bookshelf speakers to be aimed and tilted? There are, and okay, we've dealt with this a couple of times before with multiple rows of seats. The question is, where are you sitting? What do you really care about? Do you care about making sure that everybody gets surround sound, good surround sound, with the speakers actually being behind them? Or do you care that the primary seats, where 99% of the time people are getting the good surround sound, and the back seats maybe have slightly compromised surround sound, because who cares about those people anyways?
But it sounds like it is only 1 row. It's just that now it's.
I thought you said 2 rows.
No, it's 2 feet off. the back wall. He has one row of 4 recliners, but he's moved it back close to the back wall now because he's got this gigantic projection screen for the first time.
Yeah, so I would not put you could put them on the back wall. That'd be fine.
You could in this situation, given how close you are to that back wall now. Yeah, I mean,
but I would
this
still
is
have
a case where like the rear corners would actually make sense.
You could, because it's 2 feet behind you and a little bit elevated, right?
Yeah.
So that might back wall might be okay, but you would still have them facing each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I would put a sound absorber like right next to them. If where that first reflection point is on that back wall.
Like on the actual back wall.
On the
right
actual
beside
back wall.
them. So, close to the back corner, like a little bit in front of the back corner with sound absorption in the actual back corner is what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get on board
And the
with
idea
that.
here is that you want to catch that, you don't want to get that bounce right off that back wall, or you want to deaden that a little bit.
Super strong reflection.
But you do not want them facing you. You don't want them tilted in, and you don't want them facing forward. You want them facing each other.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be the proper way to set those up.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have the shelf itself 2 feet above your head, because that's going to put the tweeter like 3 feet or more above your head.
Yeah.
Right? I would maybe put the shelf 1 foot above your head, or even like half a foot above your head when you're sitting down, so that
Just make sure that the tweeter has a line of sight to your ears.
Yeah, the tweeter has a line of sight. The entire speaker, the woofer, doesn't need a line of sight, but you want the tweeter to have line of sight over to all the seats. So yeah, I'd maybe put that shelf 1 foot above your head. That way the tweeter's going to be about 2 feet above your head. And I put them on the side walls, just a little in front of the back wall, and yes, the speaker's aimed straight at each other. Is there a mount that could do this instead of a shelf? Yeah, those side clamping wall mounts are a great idea for this. They can take, unless it's a really big bookshelf speakers, they can take just about any bookshelf speakers, hold 55 pounds as long as you screw them into a stud, so that shouldn't be a problem, and they're $28 over at Amazon for a pair of them, so it doesn't break the bank. In fact, a shelf might even cost you more.
There you go. Is there a reason he should even be considering adding 2 more speakers somewhere? He's really going for a good 5.2 system first, but almost all decent AV receivers have 7 channels anyways. You can understand our saying that if you're going to do Atmos, it's worth having 4 overhead speakers, but that you don't want to upgrade your receiver to a 9-channel model. Would adding either surround backs or top middles be worth the expenditure of time and money, or would that accomplish virtually nothing? In your case, surround backs would be ludicrous.
They'd be distracting. They'd be right in the back of your head, firing right in the back of your head. I wouldn't do surround backs in your case. No.
You could do top middles. I think would be the only ones that I would consider. I think top fronts or front heights or whatever would be pointless.
Well, top fronts I could maybe get behind. That's where most of the Atmos content goes, is into top fronts. But yeah, top middles, top fronts, something along those lines.
I would not find top fronts to be all that. Or front heights. Is the
front heights, yeah. Front heights. I don't know what it is about front heights, but they don't seem to do a ton.
They don't do anything. Would it be worth it? I don't know. You'd have to determine that.
Yeah.
But I think most of the time you would think that it was not.
if you've got yourself a 7-channel receiver that can do 5.2.2 Atmos anyway, we're like, never use surround backs in your current setup, so there's that gone. So the only thing you could do is add overheads of some kind, and it'd be like, yeah, if you happen to have a spare pair of speakers at some point, try it, but I wouldn't put all my hopes into it that it's going to revolutionize your life or anything.
Yeah. Bobby asked about potentially cutting holes in the columns/bulkheads in the rear corners of his room and putting insulation in those columns to act as bass traps. We said absolutely not to do that. Those bulkheads are part of the structure of his house. If they're covering pipes or ducts, definitely just leave them alone. Don't put holes in them. But Bobby built those columns himself. He probably made them so that he would have something to secure the rear shelf that runs the entire width of the room along the back wall. And then there's also using them to hold some of his speakers and lights. And there's a full wall behind the columns, so no pipes or ducts inside. So with that knowledge, should he cut holes, put in insulation, and try to use them as bass traps? What insulation should he use if he proceeds with this idea? Well, in order for them to be actual bass traps, you'd have to take all the drywall off, pretty much.
Almost, yeah.
You
what
basically
you want
have
is a frame, an open frame.
Yeah, an open frame. Then you would fill it up with insulation. It really, honestly, I mean, if you could get the rock wool or whatever, and it wasn't too expensive, you could do that. If you just filled it up with pink insulation, that'd be fine too.
Yeah, I mean, any insulation, but and then obviously if it is like the pink stuff, you'd want to cover that faux column with fabric at that point. I'm sure you.
Well, you would have to cover it with fabric anyways. Yeah. I think just for aesthetics.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be gross. Yellow rock wool insulation back there would be terrible. But then you would cover the entire thing with speaker grill cloth.
Yeah.
And there's numerous colors. So if you wanted to do it, basically,
you could do that.
You could do it. You would literally want as much of it exposed and open as possible. You want air to be able to get in. You don't want the air to have to go in through a little bitty hole that you cut in, or a bunch of little holes that you cut in. You want all the drywall to be either off or cut away as much as possible. Like if you left the edges up, so that you could staple the fabric to it or whatever, or just
actually, I'm sure he built stick framing for these columns,
right.
So it's like, just take down all the drywall at this point. Just go back to the stick framing.
Fill up anything within the stick framing with these
with insulation,
and then wrap the whole thing in fabric, and then you have
covered in fabric instead of drywall. Yeah.
I mean, that's perfectly.
Sure.
That's fine.
Yeah.
You just built yourself a base strap. And a good one, too.
Yeah.
So for his 12x12 room, we said dual SB1000 subs would actually be perfectly fine, since he discovered that the PB1000s he originally had in mind will be a very tight squeeze, said everybody who's ever owned them. Now that he has all of this other gear in his room. So what about the HSU VTF2 Mark Vs? How would a pair of those compare? They would crush this room.
They're even bigger, though. That doesn't make any sense. They're physically even larger than the PB1000s. Physically larger than the PB1000.
So,
that doesn't make any sense,
You couldn't fit the other ones. You could fit these either.
Yeah. No, I mean, they're great. They're terrific. They might even be a small upgrade over PB1000s, I might say. But they're physically even bigger, so it doesn't make any sense that if PB1000s were too much of a tight squeeze, that VTF2 Mark Vs would make any more sense. No, they're even larger. So, if you're looking for something smaller than PB1000s, what are your options? Well, we could point you to the VTF1, the VTF1 Mark III, which is a ported 10-inch sub, which its normal tuning frequency with both ports open is 32 hertz, I believe. But you can plug one port, and then it's essentially a 25 hertz sub. But that means it's very similar to like the RSL Speedwoofer 10S, which is also a ported 10-inch sub, which is also tuned to about 25 hertz. I mean, I know that HSU claims 22 hertz, but it's like, that's what they are. They're ported 10-inch subs. They play to about 25 hertz. That's kind of what they do.
Physics.
So, if you're just like that SB1000, you just don't like it because it's a little bit light or something like that, well, maybe I can point you to the exact same priced, mono-price, sealed 10-incher, which has about the exact same extension as the SB1000, but I actually put it in a bigger cabinet that's a little bit heavier, not much bigger, not as big as the PB1000, but a little bit bigger, heavier cabinet if you're just like, ooh, I just need it to be heavier. Well, you could look at the sealed mono price. It's $500.
Why would you look at anything that doesn't go down to 20 hertz when you've got an option that goes down to 20 hertz? I mean, the SB1000s go to 20.
Well, they claim 23, minus 3 decibels, 23 hertz is the SB1000. If you put that mono price 10-inch into THX mode, it claims 20 hertz. There.
No. All right, whatever.
Maybe get the mono price. Maybe it'll just make you feel better, and it's no more expensive than the SB1000. But this is the 10-inch sealed mono price that I'm talking about, because the 10-inch ported mono price is just as big as a PB1000.
Physics.
Yep.
He isn't happy with his LG LCD TV. It always displays a purple tint, even with a full white screen. What 65-inch TV would we recommend for around $700? He's been considering the Vizio M series. What's our opinion? My opinion is whichever one gives you the most zones of dimming.
And for $700, I mean, amazingly, what you can get for $700 is TCL's R617 over at Amazon, or the R615 version from Best Buy, also for $700, also for 65 inches from TCL. So, I mean, for $700, nothing has more local dimming zones. It does Dolby Vision. It basically hits 1,000 nits for like those 10% windows and the tests and that. I mean, there's nothing else at $700 that even comes close.
There you go. Yeah. So what if he increases his TV budget to $1,000? Would the 65-inch TCL 6 series still be the top pick, or would it change to something else? Well, I mean, I don't know. What?
So now you have an alternative choice, which is the 2018 Vizio P series. All right, so you wouldn't be able to get the brand new 2019 P series Quantum that just came out. That's over $1,000 for the 65-incher. But last year's 2018 Vizio P series, the P65 F1, that is going for $1,000 right now. Now, it's not all better than the TCL. The TCL is actually a bit brighter than the Vizio P series from 2018, but the Vizio P series does have even more local dimming zones than the TCL, which means a little bit better uniformity. It does mean a little bit better black levels. So if you watch in a dark or dim room, I would tend to favor the Vizio. But the thing that many people complain about with the Vizio is that if your source signal has any color banding in it at all, the Vizio does nothing to hide it. It's like the worst color banding. I mean, it's not really the TV's fault. It's really just completely unadulteratedly showing you what's in the source. But people are like, man, there's color banding everywhere on this Vizio, and it's not quite so bad on other TVs. So it's almost like dark room, I favor the Vizio myself. It has that little bit better black levels, more local dimming zones. But bright room, you can make an argument for the TCL, even though it's less expensive, because it does actually get a bit brighter, and supposedly the color banding isn't quite as bad, although its screen uniformity overall isn't quite as good as the Vizio's. So it's a little bit of give and take there, and I'd kind of go bright
At this
room,
price
room.
point, if you don't think there's going to be some give and take, then
yeah.
you know,
There's
you're just not being
also
realistic.
the TCL is Roku, and the Vizio is SmartCast. And
Right.
if you love or hate one or the other, that's enough reason right there.
All right, Damien on Twitter. Damien quickly tried to set something up in his new basement so he could watch season 5 of Black Mirror. I didn't get through season 1 of Black Mirror. I'm not saying it's a bad show. I'm just saying I just lost interest. His seats are almost 10 feet away from the front wall, and he realizes his flat panel isn't going to cut it. So, but money is tight, so what are the best bang for the buck 1080p and 4K projector options? Epson
Epson will be in there.
and BenQ are the two that come to
BenQ.
my mind.
Yep. So 1080p, I don't think I'd point you to anything other than BenQ's HT2050A at the moment.
Okay.
$675 over at Amazon. So if 1080p will do you, that's pretty darn good. I mean, you get full Rec 709 color, which is 709 color. Okay, not P3 color. It's a 1080p projector, but full Rec 709 color, a full 6-segment color wheel in that thing. Pin sharp. So HT2050A, $675, 1080p. Now, if you want to get into 4K, about your least expensive option is $1,500. That's BenQ. It's their HT3550. I'm really happy that model exists. It's one of the ones that takes a 1080p panel but wobbles it 4 times per frame to give you 4K resolution. But now they actually have a color filter for that thing that gives it pretty darn close to P3 color. And supposedly does a pretty darn good job of tone mapping HDR too. So $1,500 is your entry level. Now with that, you don't get any motorized lens. You get very small amount of zoom lens range. It has a teeny tiny bit of vertical lens shift, but no horizontal lens shift and nothing motorized or anything like that. So over in Epson land, they have their, what do they even call theirs? I forget what their word for wobbling their 1080p panel is, but they wobble it, but only twice. So it isn't genuine 4K resolution. It's 2 times 1080p per frame. But they have their 4010, their Home Cinema 4010 goes for $1,800 right now. But that gets you all of a sudden full motorized lens with lens memories. So if you're doing anything with CinemaScope versus 16:9 and you want the lens memories or anything like that, you've got all that fully motorized, huge zoom range, huge vertical lens shift, lots of horizontal lens shift too. So the lens is the big upgrade there, and full P3 color, compatible with HDR, and black levels between the BenQ DLP projectors and the Epson 4000 series, the 4010, pretty similar. So if you're talking, is there bang for buck that costs more? The argument can be made for Epson's ultra black projectors, right? So that 5050 UB just came out. It's down to, what price did I predict only a couple weeks after launch? $2,700. It's there already. We made it. It's here. $2,700.
Right now it's $3,000. I just clicked on it.
Is it there? Well, you can certainly find it for $2,700. Lots of places we're having it. That's just the Amazon price at the moment. So yeah, That one, it's the ultra black. It's full P3 color. That one has the full 18 gigabits per second on its HDMI inputs. I should mention that Epson 4010 does not have 18 gigabits per second HDMI inputs, so it is limited to 4K HDR at 24 or 30 frames per second. It can't do 4K HDR at 60 frames per second. That's the 4010. But the 5050 UB can. It can do all the things, but of course the price goes up.
So any particular good places to look for refurbished deals? Now, what was it, Visual Apex, or who are we talking about that you see the price, but then you call them and it sometimes changes? What's that?
Well, AV Science.
AV Science.
AV Science will they will negotiate. So AV Science is a place that you can ask. But both BenQ and Epson actually have their own refurbished websites that you can check directly. So it's benqdirect.com. They sell refurbished models there on benqdirect.com. And Epson has epson.com/clearance-center. So that is refurbished Epson projectors directly from Epson.
Okay. What should you get for a screen? Excuse me, my voice is changing. I think I'm going through puberty with my sons. Right. What size for about a 10-foot viewing distance? White, silver, gray, matte, high gain. You should get a white. It's a basement.
It's a basement.
You said basement. So I got to believe there's light control. You should get a white, silver ticket, fixed frame screen. That's which should be about like a 100 and something, 100 and change. I don't remember. It's not very much. It's ridiculously cheap.
For 10-foot viewing distance. They've got 110 and they have 120. Now 120 from 10 feet away would be a 47-degree field of view, which is that's bigger than I would personally go for. I like 45 degrees, but some people like larger. Nothing wrong with that. Now 110-inch diagonal screen from 10 feet away would be
down from there. They'll probably have a 92 or something like that.
Oh yeah, they got 100 and they got a 92.
Okay.
So, but 43.5 degree field of view if you get the 110 incher. I think that's a real nice choice. 110 inches, 10 feet away. Just get the white. I mean, personally, since his room isn't like blacked out, the walls and the ceiling and that aren't blacked out, if it had a little bit of gain, that'd be, I'm not talking a lot, a little bit, and theirs is a 1.1 gain instead of a 1.0.
Technically a little bit.
It's technically a little bit. It's just right. It's everything you want. Don't get silver. Definitely. People who got silver screens, I'm like, I hope you enjoy that hot spotting, because holy cow.
Yeah. I don't want to get anything that was high gain or
no, you don't need that.
Light rejecting, anything like that would just it's absolutely unnecessary.
And I know there are people who like their gray screens, but I have never been able to stand a gray screen. I'm like, I'm sorry, white looks gray. I know everyone says, no, you don't see it. It just makes your blacks better and the white still looks well. I'm like, not to me, it doesn't.
So when any of these projectors work with a 17-foot throw distance, I can't believe that they won it. I mean...
well, the BenQs, actually, the image would end up being bigger because they have quite short throws.
Oh, well.
So the Epsons could easily
Does he mean it has to be 17 feet, or does he mean a maximum of 17 feet?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a real question there.
I know.
If you're saying that your room is 17 feet long and you're putting it on the back wall no matter what, well then you're going to have to. I mean, but within 17 feet, I can't believe that any of these projectors can't.
Yeah, like if you can
inch.
ceiling mount, you'd need to put the BenQ options closer than 17 feet lens to screen to throw a 110 inch, for example, because they have quite short throws on the BenQs. If you're like, yeah, this is where my projector has to go, well, then get an Epson because they will do 17 feet from 110 inch screen just fine.
Yeah. So any recommendations for a mount? And if he wants a mount, that means he does not put it on the shelf on the back wall, which means that you should be able to be fine with any of these projectors.
Oh, I'm answering this.
Chief, Peerless. Yeah. I mean, there's Monoprice has got them.
Price range, yeah. I mean, I like to go Peerless because to me, like Chief are really nice, but a bit pricier.
They are.
Like, if I'm getting a JVC or one of the high end Sonys, I probably want a Chief mount just so I'm like super sure. But the Peerless mounts are almost every bit as good. What I like about them over the really inexpensive ones that you'd grab off a Monoprice, say, is that these have the nice gear adjustment.
Yeah.
So that that little bit of adjustment for the roll, pitch, and yaw, these have the little gear that gives you that really fine adjustment, and I like that. And without
it's such a pain when you're trying to mount these things, and then you're like, it's just a little bit cocked, and you're trying to straighten it out. You want to have that fine adjustment.
Yeah, trying to do that by hand with the screw you have to tighten with a screwdriver, that is a pain and a half. Whereas if you got the little worm gear that you can just turn, so easy. So it's $80 for Peerless's universal ceiling mount that has the little gear adjustments. I know if you're if you're getting the 1080p for $675, you're like $80 for a mount. So maybe you do just go get a $15 monoprice one at that point. But if you're getting an $1,800 projector, $80 for a really nice mount, I don't think that's too bad.
So you asked, what about a painted screen? There was a time during the life of this podcast. I mean, we've been doing this for a dozen years. There's a time during the life of this podcast where that was a viable option, and one that we would recommend for people who were handy. Things you have to worry about: how smooth is your wall?
It needs to be smooth.
It needs to be super smooth, which means you're going to be up there spackling and finishing and sanding and getting it perfect. All right, which is going to take a lot of time and materials and a lot of energy.
And we know he has allergies. You know how much sanding you have to do to get that right? Oh man.
Yeah. Right. Then you have to build the frame that goes around it. You don't have to, but you should. You need some sort of border around it that can absorb.
You could just tape it off with black felt tape, but
you could. You could. But still, again, we're still looking at more expenditure of money here. And then you have to get the proper paint, and you're going to paint multiple layers. You're gonna do this. This is a lot of time, and for the $100 and something silver ticket screen,
I know,
right?
That hangs just like a picture frame and is super easy to take with you if you ever move again.
when the cheapest projection screens that were available were like $500 to $700, which was the way it was.
When Corrada was the cheap screen out there, right?
Yeah. And Corrada was expensive.
They were like $800-900 for a 100-inch screen, right?
Yeah.
But at one point, they were the cheap guys. Yeah.
They were the inexpensive ones, and then you're like looking at these projection setups and comparing them not to, a 55-inch 1080p $700 $700 flat panel, 55-inch, something like that. You're looking at. You were comparing them to the flagship. Like, should I get the flagship TV or get a projection setup because of all the cost that was associated with it? Nowadays, we can compare them to the stuff you get from Walmart because it's $1,500 for a projector and $100 for a screen. Bob's your uncle. You're under $2,000. You're not even spending OLED money at this point. I
got to say, this many years in, the people I have followed who have painted screens, they have never stopped repainting that screen. It's just been the constant search to get a little bit better, a little bit smoother, a little bit less hot spotting, whatever it was. They have never stopped painting that screen. I'm like, I don't see the value in it anymore. Not when there's Silver Ticket out there that makes it so easy. And you know what? If Silver Ticket is too expensive, I would go and grab some countertop laminate, some matte white, smooth countertop laminate, the stuff that just comes in a roll.
Yeah.
You grab that, you throw some black felt tape on that, and stick it on your wall, and you're done. It's cheaper and easier than painting.
Anthony says his room is about 18 by 14. He's using a Denon S940H receiver to power a pair of Polk T50 tower speakers, a Focal Chorus CC700 center, and a pair of Polk T15 bookshelf surround speakers, along with a pair of SVS PB1000 subs.
You got nice subs.
He does. Very specific.
They big.
Yeah, they are big. Are the PB1000 subs good enough for his room, or should he plan on upgrading them in the future? Yeah.
18 by 14? I mean, they fit, right? You got them in there? That's more the concern.
Well, I mean, you should be able to tell us, dude. Have you ever felt your couch shake? Because if you have, then they're big enough. Because that's pretty much what it is.
No, 18 by 14. If dual PB1000s aren't doing it, then you don't actually have an 18 by 14 foot room. You have some gigantic opening to something you haven't told about.
Yeah. So he's got about $500 he could spend right now. He likes his Focal CC700 center more than his Polk towers. Are there any front, left, right speakers that we would recommend that would fit his budget and better pair with his Focal center? Does Focal, so the Little Birds and all those speakers, does Accessories for Us sell other Focal speakers, or they don't sell Focal at all?
They have some, including the bookshelf Chorus 706s, which are the exact same series as your CC700. It's the Chorus series. These are the matching bookshelf speakers. They sell them at Accessories for Less for $450 a pair. Right now, as we're recording this, it says almost sold out, which probably means they have 2 or 3 pairs left. Because when they literally have 1 pair left, they say last one. But not a huge amount of stock. But I mean, I would snap those up. And I know they're not towers. I get it. They're not towers. You're also in an 18 by 14 foot room. How
With
far
dual
away
PP1000
you
subs,
possibly
you're fine.
be sitting? No, grab those. I would agree. I would
$50 on the
expect
stands.
to like that Focal Chorus 700 series center more than the Polk T50 towers. I
Yeah.
would expect that to be the case. And these bookshelf speakers, the 706s, they're what you should get.
So if these are not available anymore and you're whatever, then I would go RBH,
Sure.
the Impression series.
Yeah.
Whichever ones you can afford for $500.
Yeah, I can dig that.
Yeah, those are nice and neutral speakers. They should play very well with your center channel.
Yes.
You could get other ones. You could go for other things, but that is a absolutely no-brainer second choice.
Agreed.
Ilango. One of Ilango's friends bought a 55-inch TCL R615 4K TV. His friend asked Ilango for advice about setting it up, and in turn, Ilango's asking us.
All right.
He's
He's going to take all the credit. He's going to take all the credit.
Where's our PayPal donation? Where's our our donations, man? We gotta get new listeners. The TV is in the family room with a fairly bright lighting, definitely not a dim theater setup. Is this one of the TVs that is pretty close to accurate out of the box? Should the calibration setup disc be used? What should the settings for the SDR during the day, SDR at night, and HDR be? Well, TCL, from my recollection, is pretty accurate out of the box as long as you set it in the cinema mode.
The 6 series is, it is one of the ones that's shockingly close to accurate right out of the box. Yes.
So I don't know, like, do they already have modes for day, SDR day, SDR
They have one
night?
of the best setups that I wish everyone would copy. So you do want to put it in, so they call it movie mode, all right? Some would be cinema mode or whatever.
Cinema
Their name
mode.
for it is movie mode. That's the one you want to choose. And you're basically going to leave it in movie mode no matter what, because very cleverly, when you first press the options button, which again, this runs on Roku, so it's the little star button on the Roku remote, that brings up your settings. Now, right away, before you go into any of the advanced settings, any of the contrast, brightness, or any of that, right there, they have a thing that says TV brightness, darker or brighter. Guess which is appropriate for which setting. Pretty clear. And I mean, that's almost all you have to do for switching between night and day. You're going to leave it in movie mode all the time. You're just going to go darker at night, brighter during the day. Couldn't be much simpler than that. So I love that. Now, you will end up going into the advanced picture settings to change a few other things. Now, funnily enough, if you put it in dark, in that darker mode for the TV brightness and then set the backlight all the way down to 0, that gets you the industry standard 100 nit peaks for SDR. So it only goes brighter than that. Should you use a setup disc? Well, you could for setting your brightness and contrast levels.
Right.
That's what the setup disc would be good for. You don't need it for anything else. So you don't even need to purchase a disc. You can get those test patterns online, plenty of places. You could use the free AVS disc if you want that, because all you're looking for are contrast and brightness test patterns to set those for your
Yeah,
given room
I don't
lighting.
even know that I would go through much of that. What with there being highly different lighting settings throughout the day, it would technically equal it out, but
I mean, to me, mostly the brightness setting, which is your black level, because you don't want to be losing shadow details. So, I mean, if you were, that's what it would be. Now, I mean, for pretty much everything else, instead of literally running through every setting in this TV, because that's not really what this podcast is normally going to do, we can just point you to, we'll have the link for it at avrant.com, our website. Ratings, they have a full settings for this TCL TV. Now, what I would suggest is I'll also post the settings from over at CNET. Now, CNETs don't go into every single little setting, whereas Ratings does, but CNET gets it more right. So use their settings first, leave everything that CNET has put in their settings, and then for the few items that they don't mention, you can look over at Ratings. But yeah, one thing that they do mention over at Ratings is that for HDR, you'll actually want to go into the main menu of the whole Roku system as a whole, not just the TV picture settings, because you can find a setting in the Roku setup for the HDMI mode, and by default, out of the box, it's in auto, and you need to set that to HDMI 2 to have HDR work properly. So ratings tells you how to get there, CNET doesn't. But I mean, other than that, in general, most of the TCLs come with a little bit too much red in the bright areas of the picture and not quite enough blue. That seems to be generally what most people have found. Now, we can't be sure. Some unit-to-unit variation, it might not be the case, but that seems to be the case. In the case of these TCLs, to adjust any of that stuff and to adjust the gamma setting, which is normally in the TV's menu, but it's not in this one, you actually have to use the separate Roku app on your smartphone. So you have to get the Roku TV app on your smartphone to adjust the gamma and the individual color settings. Don't touch the color. Just don't. It's not worth it. It's close enough out of the box. The gamma, though, you might want to change. During the day, I'd probably have the gamma at 2.2, and at night, I'd probably have it at 2.4.
If you're going to do the brightness too, if you decide to go ahead and go through that little exercise, it's like a 5-minute exercise.
Oh yeah,
it doesn't take you.
No, I mean it's a test pattern that says this bar should be visible. Raise the brightness until it is.
Until it is. Yeah, it's going to take you longer to get the thing playing than it is to actually make the changes. Do it at night and turn off every light that you can. That's the only thing I'm going to say. You just don't do it during the day.
Yeah, actually, and then during the day, you just switch it over to brighter and maybe bust out the app and change the gamma to 2.2. That'd be about it.
Dawn's room is roughly 20 by 28 with 10.5-foot ceilings and open to the entire universe. There's stairways, there's hallways, there's kitchens, there's bathrooms, there's a sauna, I think. On our advice, he bought a Rhythmic FV15HP subwoofer, and he's been quite happy with that. He also likes his Legacy Audio Focus speakers, which are 94 dB 1 watt sensitive. If you're wondering if that's sensitive, that's like, don't whisper at them because they're gonna be loud. He sits 17 feet away from a 65-inch Sony TV, which he knows is too small for that distance, but this isn't his area of concern right now. The back of his seat is pretty much against the back wall, and for a surround sound system, his center is an in-wall Solus brand speaker above his TV, and his surrounds are Solus in-ceiling speakers right directly above him. When he's just watching TV, he uses a Sony soundbar. If I had those speakers, I would never use anything else.
Right?
But that's just, I mean, why? But whatever. Okay, he does. And he only turns on his surround sound system for movies, and of course, he uses his Legacy speakers for music. Out of everything, what he would like to upgrade most is his receiver. It's a Yamaha RX-A1040. He isn't happy with the results of YPAL. He doesn't like the Yamaha app. At the moment, he uses HDMI ARC to feed sound to the Sony soundbar, and then uses optical to feed to the Yamaha. From what?
From the TV.
Oh.
Yeah, well, because he's got these two different sound systems, he's fed all his sources into the TV, and then he goes out via HDMI ARC to the sound bar, which he can turn on and off independently, and out via optical to his surround sound AV receiver, this Yamaha. That's what he's done.
Okay. And whenever he makes the switch in his TV from HDMI ARC to optical output, the Yamaha needs to be reset for some reason. He also has a pair of Emotiva XPA-1L monoblock amplifiers for his Legacy speakers, which I think if you look at the front of them, it says overkill. But he would like to simplify. He doesn't think that monoblocks are actually necessary. You are correct. Yeah. He also has no plans for Atmos or more speakers, which totally makes sense in his current setup because there's no place to put Atmos. So what AV receiver would we recommend for under $1,000? He wants better room correction with more flexibility. He wants a better control app. He wants streaming music services, including Pandora and Sirius XM. And he's thinking he'd like to be able to buy amp his Legacy speakers since he'll be getting rid of the huge Emotiva monoblocks. What do we suggest? All right. So what are he's got a whole bunch of sources. He's plugged them all into the TV.
Yeah.
And then he sends out, which is almost certainly some sort of downgraded sounds back to his receiver via optical.
Well, I mean, it'd be Dolby Digital 5.1. That's what it would be.
Yeah. Yes, but if he's watching a Blu-ray, then it goes back down to 5.1.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
Dolby Digital.
I mean, that A1040, I mean, that had HDMI, so yeah. I'm not entirely sure.
Well, I don't understand why you don't plug everything into the receiver
I know.
and then have HDMI run up to your TV and then optical back down to the soundbar.
Well, that's not always going to work for everything because it would.
But, I mean, he could literally just use left, right, whatever, or zone 2 or something from the receiver to the soundbar. I mean, you want everything going into the receiver. I'm all for this guy getting a new receiver. I got no problems with that. But I think that you could have better overall everything if you didn't hook it up the way you've got it hooked up.
Yeah.
I mean, you want your receiver to get the most pristine signal, and right now, it's not.
Yeah, that is definitely the case. I mean, are we going to point him to anything other than an X3400H?
No.
Because that checks all the boxes. I mean, so
Multi-2 XT32, which is the best room correction.
XT32.
I don't know that the app is going to be better than the Yamaha
I mean,
app.
yeah, that's just going to be I mean, they have the Denon app, so it certainly has an app. Whether you'll like it better than Yamaha's, I don't know. As far as getting SiriusXM and Pandora and other streaming services, it's got Hios built in, so it can do all that through the Hios app. Okay. So it does that. You can even choose to amplify your fronts. There's really no reason to do it, but if that's just what you have in mind that you have to do it, it can use it.
And
6th
you will
and
have
7th
the
amplifiers.
You'll have the. I was going to say you're going to have the extra amplifier power anyways.
And if you decide that you need an external amp in the future, it's got a full set of pre-outs to do that too. So, I mean, the X3400H is what we're going to point you to. From Accessories Less, it's $450, so it's certainly well below your $1,000 price point that you specified.
But I'm still going to suggest that you plug everything into the receiver.
Yeah, everything into the receiver. Well, okay, so
there's two issues.
Can
that
we
are
just
going
get rid of
here.
the sound bar, please? Can we?
Yeah,
can we
well,
just
the
do
sound
that?
the sound bar seems silly. I mean, just turn the main speakers down. To me, he's sitting on the back wall, right?
Yeah.
So we got to worry about whether his problem is occasionally, having problems hearing things or whatever.
Dialogue, especially with that high up in wall center speaker that isn't actually centered over his television from the looks of it.
That doesn't bother me quite as much. It's not that off center. It's not
that off center, but still.
I mean, use the sound bar as the center channel. I mean, the sound bar is actually better positioned.
Well, actually,
as
because
you have
pre-outs. Yeah, you have a pre-out from your AV receiver now if you get the X3400H. So yeah, you could just take that Y, split it into the left and right input of your sound bar, and now it's your center speaker.
Yeah.
It doesn't match your legacies. That is not a timbre match. A Sony soundbar with legacy left rights. That is not a timbre match.
Well, do you think that the in ceiling, whatever the heck that thing is, the
I do
thing
not.
is going to be a timbre match either? So, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You could try both.
Yeah.
I would never use a soundbar again, but that's just me. Okay. If you are insisting on using the soundbar, that's fine. Just don't hook it up the way you have it hooked up. You need to go everything into the receiver, and I think you should do this to the Yamaha before you get rid of it. I think you're mad at the Yamaha because it but I think give it a fair shake.
That's
hook
true.
everything into the AV receiver.
Yeah.
Use HDMI ARC or an audio return channel to get whatever apps you're using on the TV back down to the receiver. Okay.
Yeah.
And then if you insist on using the soundbar, which I really wish you wouldn't, but if you insist on using the soundbar, then you can either figure out a way to go from the TV back down.
I mean, you could also just do optical from the TV back down to the soundbar.
Well, that's what I said to begin with. You said it doesn't always work. So.
Well, yeah, it doesn't, because if it's lossless going into the AV receiver, then that won't pass all the way through. It is a little bit complicated when you're trying to do two different setups like that. Yeah, it's a little bit complicated. I kind of understand why you did it that way. Keeps it compatible.
All right, I have to scroll back down. Okay. Matt is trying to decide what type of speakers to install in his Atmos speakers. And exactly, where to put them. He is going for a 5.2.4 configuration, which is what we suggested in his 14-foot wide, 39-foot long basement room that is open at the back and really has no convenient place for surround back speakers. Yay. That sounds about that. Right. He was thinking to install 4 in-ceiling speakers, 45 degrees in front and 45 degrees behind his listening position, but there's a large support beam running left to right across across the ceiling about 3.5 feet behind the seats, and that obstructs the ideal spots for his top rear speakers. So he figured just move the top rear speakers so they're in front of the support beam. But then there's an HVAC return duct taking up the joist bay, and that's in the ceiling right above where his right top rear speaker would go. Right top rear, whatever.
Right top.
And
rear.
he definitely doesn't want to move the large air duct return air duct, whatever. So what should he do? Use on-wall speakers of some kind. The ceiling is only 7'9" after the drywall, so should he use very thin on-wall speakers pointing straight down? Should he get traditional satellites or small bookshelf speakers of some kind? He'd like for all 4 overhead speakers to be identical, so whatever he uses as top rears need to work as top fronts too, at least in his plan. What do we suggest?
I don't think the top fronts and the top rears need to be identical. That's where I'm going to start.
Well, you could definitely say that. I mean, I would agree with that, as long as they're reasonably flat speakers and not something like.
I mean, these are Atmos speakers. As long as they're not wildly different, I'd be totally fine with my top fronts being different from my top rears.
But you're looking at these things. Remember, there's 45 degrees. Yes, that falls smack dab where they need to fall. But if you're a little bit in front, a little bit behind, that's fine. Mm-hmm. And attaching itself to that, attaching the speakers to the bulkhead, or attaching the speakers
to that support beam that's hanging down.
That, to me, that's the obvious thing to do, is just to do that.
I mean, I was thinking, could he do prime elevation speakers that are like actually on that support beam, right? They're on the support beam up against the ceiling, angled down. Those are your top rears. And then you just do in-ceiling top fronts, maybe something like the Aperion Intimus in-ceiling top fronts, which would totally match fine with prime elevation top rears.
Yeah, you could do that. If you wanted to do something like an on-wall speaker that was maybe different, or didn't have that angle, or you had more ability to adjust, you could actually take something like an NHT Super Zero or the Boston Acoustics we were talking about earlier, mount them to the bulkhead, either in front or behind, and just make sure that the front of the speaker is just a little bit lower than the bulkhead itself. And we're talking just so that it's flush. You know what I mean? Just so that the front of the speaker is just like a millimeter below the bulkhead itself. And I think you could mount it just like that, and that would be fine too.
All right. Well, there we go. 4 potential suggestions.
There you go.
One of those should do you.
Nick is the fellow with the BK electric subwoofer that was crackling and making strange sounds. He was all prepared to spend upwards of £1,000 on a replacement sub from SVS, but we said we suspect it was just a faulty amplifier, and that we would be worth checking with BK Electric to find out how much a replacement amp would cost and just how difficult it would be to swap amps. Turns out we were right. It was a faulty amp and only cost him £50, which, to do the math, is a lot less than £1,000.
It is.
And to have the amp repaired by BK, taking it out and putting it back in wasn't too difficult at all. We saved him somewhere in the range of £750 to £950, which he promptly spent on not sending it to us, but on a new 65-inch C8 OLED instead. One day somebody's going to do that. One's going to say, "You saved me $10,000. Here's $10,000." I'll be like,
wouldn't that be the day?
That would be the day. I would get a 4K projector that day. We recently said that, which is a few setting changes, we could get people to about 90% of professional calibration. So fire away. What should the settings be for day mode, night mode, and HDR? Oh my God, it's like the same question.
Except it's for a completely different TV, but the answer is going to be pretty similar.
Right.
I'm once again going to send you over to Arting's ratings, except once again I'm going to say there are a couple of settings that I don't necessarily 100% agree with, so overall you can follow that. Now, I am going to have a link. I'm not going to give it out here because there's no real way to easily say it, but I will have a link that's posted in the show notes where I posted my own settings for my B7 OLED. So remember, this is the year before, and there were a few differences, but not very many, and overall the settings are very, very similar, and I actually even put notes in that Facebook post of the things that are different in the 2016s and 2018s versus the 2017 B7 that I was talking about. The most important thing that everybody does mention is it's not in the picture setting menu. It's the energy saving thing. For the love of all that is right in the world, turn energy saving off, because anything other than off is just a bad time with an OLED. So energy saving off. I say to set the aspect ratio to original, not 16:9, because 16:9 stretches things. So I don't know why they recommend that. Original keeps things looking right. Artings always sets their gamma to 2.2. They target 2.2 for everything. I don't agree with that. At night in the dark, I say your gamma should be. They now have a full standard, which is called BT1886, which is one of the options, and the LG OLEDs track it extremely closely. So set it to BT1886 for the gamma, for your night mode. For your day mode, by all means, leave it in 2.2, and you want to use the ISF dark and the ISF bright modes as your night and day mode. You can figure out which one is which. True motion, they say to set to off. I say no. Set that to user and set both of the sliders to 0. That way everything is shown at 120 hertz, but without any frame interpolation. So that looks a lot better. And try to keep the OLED light setting, which is akin to a backlight setting, try to keep that to 45 or lower, because that will prevent the automatic brightness limiter from pumping the light in your image. If you set your day mode to 45, honestly, night mode can be like 14 if you want actual 100 nit peaks. So it can be really low. So those are some of the settings that I disagree with from Artings. For HDR, they say to use the Technicolor Expert mode, which Vincent Teo over at HDTV Test, he's like, yeah, that gives you the wrong white point. So use Cinema. I don't know why. Like, they're like, oh, Technicolor Expert gives you more settings options. I'm like, no, it gives you exactly the same settings options as Cinema, but Cinema is accurate and Technicolor Expert isn't. So use Cinema.
Yay,
and
Technicolor. Remember when that was a thing?
In Dolby Vision, use the Cinema mode, not the Cinema Home mode. Go ahead and use the Cinema Home mode during the day if you're like, Dolby Vision just looks too dark during the day. I agree. Use the Cinema Home mode there. But at night, use Cinema mode. And if you're like, it still looks too dark even at night, because Dolby Vision Cinema mode is for like pitch blackness, no light at all. If you have a teeny tiny little bit of light, in Dolby Vision mode, that OLED light setting does not raise and lower the overall brightness level. It alters the like way that it tracks the gamma curve. It's like repurposed. So increase the OLED light setting in Dolby Vision mode to keep things accurate but make it look a little bit brighter. I think that's about it. If you do have a game mode, if you use game mode, set the color temperature to W40. I don't know why you can't set it to something else, but color temperature to W40 and the gamma to medium. Okay, that's everything.
All right, whatever. Shannon currently uses an Epson Pro Cinema 6030 UB projector. It looks great, but it's 1080p and can't do HDR. He's seen the new Viewsonic LS700-4K Laser projector listed for $2,200, and that has piqued his interest. His wife says it doesn't make sense that a projector is cheaper, smaller, and looks cheap, is somehow going to have a better looking image than their current 6030 UB Epson. Can he convince her otherwise, or does she have a point? Well, I mean, objectively, you can put a piece of garbage in a really nice box. Doesn't make whatever.
Well,
the
it's not
is.
A piece of garbage.
It's not, but I'm just saying, objectively, it's not the case that you can look at the outside of a projector and say, this one's got a nicer case, therefore it must be better than this one with a crappier case. I mean, that's just objectively not true. But, so I should have brought some water in here. Is the Viewsonic, well, first of all, the Viewsonic sounds like it's more of a business class than it does a home theater one.
I mean, there's a little bit of that. I mean, I guess he's thinking, oh, laser, it must be more advanced. It's no. In fact, there's a filter in that one to not even quite yet get you to Rec 709 color.
Ooh.
Who
needs all those colors?
Yeah, it's well below Rec 709 color natively. There's a filter to get you kind of close to Rec 709, and it definitely can't reach P3. So, I mean, that's not particularly different from your current 6030. Your current 6030 is a 1080p Rec 709 projector, but you're not getting the actual wide color that you would hope for from an HDR image.
And is it actual 4K, or is it like...
No, it's the 1080p chip that's wobbled 4 times. Same thing there, which means actually that its black levels are significantly not as black as your existing 6030. Your 6030 has blacker blacks than this Viewsonic. I know that it claims like 3 million to 1 contrast. Well, yeah, because you can turn the laser off entirely. But
They should just say infinity because that's what it is.
Well, sure. I mean, it's what we got global dimming. It's not local dimming. You can't turn part of the image off and part of it back on. It's all or nothing.
Right.
With the laser there. So no, it doesn't have that contrast in the real world. That's, dynamic on off. Yeah, an entirely black screen. Sure, it's a little blacker. As soon as there's anything on the screen, it's gray black, not black. And your 6030 UV comes pretty close to black. So your wife has a point. I would not be replacing your Epson 6030 UB with this particular model. I'd be looking hard at that 5050 UB though, because I mean, if $2,200, then how about $2,700, or wait a little bit because it'll come down more than that. Yeah, that's where I'd be looking more than this.
Well, the 4010 is what, 1,800. I mean,
yeah, but the 4010 has definitely grayer blacks than, I mean, once you have a UB, an ultra black projector, it's hard to go to anything less. Yeah.
All right, Shannon has a Denon AV receiver. He has 3 Emotiva monoblock amps connected to it for his front, left, right, center speakers. But he has noticed that if he presses the power buttons on the Emotiva amplifiers and turns them off, sound is still coming out of the speakers. There doesn't seem to be any change. Is something hooked up incorrectly?
It would seem so.
The same volume?
Yeah.
I mean, are you plugged in? I mean,
I have a suspicion of how he might have wired this.
How could you do that?
We don't know what he's connecting, right? He said a Denon AV receiver, but we don't know what model, right? Is it possible it was a Denon model that doesn't have pre-outs and he connected the speaker wire outputs to the amplifier? Like, in other words, because I'm trying to figure out how this could be the case.
Well, I mean, okay, so for everybody else, there are line level outputs on the back of some AV
RCA
not all of them,
plugs,
but some,
regular red and white looking plugs, that type of plug.
Except they have a bajillion different little colors on them, which are immaterial. It doesn't make any difference. So what you do is you take your RCA cable, and you plug it into the left, the one that's labeled pre-out L, and you take that out. You run that cable to the amplifier that you want to connect to your front left speaker. You plug that into the back of that amplifier. Then you take the speaker level wires and you connect it to the back of the amplifier.
The external amplifier now.
The external amplifier to the speaker. Now, instead of using... Now, remember, the internal amplifiers that are hooked up to the left channel are still going to be putting out power.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, or still have power available. They'll have no call for power because there's no speaker wire hooked up to the amplifier within the AV receiver.
But they're not disconnected.
Okay.
On the AV receiver, the pre-outs, if you have them, the RCA connections, and the speaker binding posts where you would screw in speaker wire or plug in banana plugs, those are both live all the time on an AV receiver.
So what Rob's saying is and this is honestly, I can't even imagine. The only two things I can imagine is that he went RCA from the receiver to the amplifier and then plugged the speaker wire into the receiver. The receiver's binding post.
Meaning the external amplifier at the moment is literally doing nothing.
Right.
That would be one.
Or he didn't have the RCA out and had the speaker wire from the left speaker going to the external amplifier, then and then connected to the binding post, and then connected to the same binding post.
That's right.
The speaker wire going to the speaker itself, which means the amplifier is still doing nothing. The physical connection between the receiver, between the two levels of speaker wire, are the ones that are conveying the amplified power, and the binding post in the case of the amplifier is just literally just.
So I mean, in other words, there should be no speaker wire connected to your AV receiver. Right?
Yes.
If you have no speaker wire connected to your AV receiver right now, the only way I can think this is happening is, do your Emotiva monoblocks have like an auto on sensing or something?
Yeah,
maybe?
I guess that could be the other thing.
That would be the only other thing I could think of, right? If you've gone RCA cables from your AV receiver to your Emotiva amplifiers, and you have no speaker wire at all attached to your AV receiver, and you have speaker wire attached to your Emotiva and an RCA cable attached to your Emotiva, and you're like, I went and pushed the power button on the front of my Emotiva, and yet my speakers are still playing. The only thing I can think of is if they have some sort of auto on sensor, and therefore they're just like, well, I'm still getting a signal, so I'm turning myself back on.
And believe me, this is the kind of like you hook up amplifiers once and you never do it again, and many people never do it at all. So making a mistake of any kind is completely understandable. I will say though, I just during this podcast, while we're recording this podcast, I got an Emotiva from an email from Emotiva that says they're about to raise their prices based on the tariffs that are being imposed. So.
Well, SVS has been talking about that on Facebook a little bit too. So.
If you have ever wanted the Emotiva amplifier, you should get them before they raise the prices.
Yes.
That's what I'll say.
And do not get one of their preamps, for the love of all that's holy.
No. They cannot make a receiver or a preamp. They can't do it. It's not. They try.
That XMC one that they had promised Atmos all those times ago, they're like, well, there's an XMC 2 coming out at some point in the future. That's what you're waiting for now. Yeah.
Shane. First, an update. About a month ago, we recommended dual SVS PB1000 subs for his room. We never imagined how much content he had been missing before. He is very pleased with the outcome. He also said in his previous message that he would never consider something like dual PB2000s, just too large and expensive. Tom said something along the lines of, we'll see about that. Once again, we were right. Now he's strongly considering using SVS's upgrade policy. Never.
Well, congrats on
who needs more bass
being welcomed into gigantic dual sub club hood. Welcome everyone who listens to this podcast is with you. We all commiserate.
Yes, that's right. This is an echo chamber of people who have spent too much money on home theater. He was looking to upgrade his Epson G5200W projector, which was more of a business class model. He ordered the BenQ HT3550, and he's pleased with that, as it easily outperforms his old Epson in every way except maximum lumens. But that doesn't matter in his light control room anyways. But the new projector that can do 4K and HDR quickly revealed that his Marantz SR5005 couldn't pass through those signals. So then he considered... then he also discovered that his HDMI cables were insufficient. He's always used Marantz, and he didn't want to wait for shipping, so he bought an SR5013 and new HDMI cables from Magnolia Best Buy. Was he too hasty? Would it be worth it to switch to a similarly priced Denon model instead? Well, similarly priced from accessories for less gets you a lot more features.
There's that. Or brand new, it would probably be the X3500H, which there is a difference, because even though those are both 7-speaker maximum models, the Denon X3500H does have XT32, and the SR5013 is XT. Now, is that a night and day you're super easily going to notice it without knowing beforehand that it was run type of difference? No, I really don't think so.
Yeah, probably not.
And if you just like the looks of that Marantz better and all that, I wouldn't say that, oh, you absolutely have to switch them out. Like Tom says, if you're shopping at accessories for less versus at, full retail price, then yeah, for around $900 or $1,000, well, you could get one of the, 9-channel, you get an X4500H and go to 11 speakers if you wanted to, right? There's that. But no, I mean, I'm not like, oh, you must return and get something else. You could get a little feature increase for around the same price regardless, though, if you wanted to.
His current setup is 7.2 using Andrew Jones Pioneer speakers. He has 2 rows of seats. He's noticed that surround back channels aren't often actually playing much. Should he consider moving his surround back to front height positions? No. And looking at this room, I'm like, nah, I want to keep surround backs in here. Yeah, he's got some room behind him.
He's got some room behind him. Yeah, for sure. I'd want to keep surround back speakers in here, and definitely, like, if you're like, oh, I don't think my surround backs really play that much sound. Yeah, guess what? Front heights.
Yeah. You want to see some unused speakers? Front heights are your boys right there. That's the slacker of the home theater world. That's the speaker that was broken and you didn't know it for years.
Right. Yes. Yeah. No. Keep your surround backs, I say.
So what about potentially keeping the surround back speakers where they are, but actually wiring the surround and surround back speakers together so they are playing the same thing all the time? Would that maybe be more beneficial for a second row? Would this AV receiver be able to handle powering that? He's open to the idea of adding one or more bookshelf speakers to make a 5.2.2 configuration, but with 2 speakers being used for each of the surround channels, so 9 speakers in all. So Andrew Jones, they are 8 ohms nominal, I believe, but they do dip down into
Yeah, they're kind of more like
six
they're like a
ohms.
6 ohm nominal speaker for the most
Yeah.
part. But if you wired them in series, it
It
shouldn't.
should be okay.
And
Yeah.
this isn't a terribly wide room, so I don't think you're asking for a tremendous amount of output. As far as safety goes, if you wired them in series, I think that'd be totally fine. But should you? I mean, do you literally want those side surround speakers and your surround back speakers playing the exact same thing all the time? Because it's going to be
don't
a
think
little bit
so.
odd with the
Yeah.
way they're currently positioned.
I would, if you did that, I would have to suggest that you move them to the side walls.
Move the
and
surround
place-
back speakers to the side
Yeah.
walls, yeah.
and place them like you would place surround speakers for your second row of seats.
Right. Yeah. I
That's
could
the way
maybe
I would
dig
have to do it.
that. I could maybe dig
But
that.
there's that door there, and that's is going to block the walkway a little bit. So
bit.
that's if you want to do it, that's fine. The other thing you could, I mean, I don't really think it's going to make any difference. But the surround back speakers, you're right, they don't tend to do a ton, but it could be because it looks like your speakers are high enough that they should have line of sight to your ears even in your front row, but they are quite far away, so
No, I mean, I
there's
think it
that
is
going
just the
too.
case. I mean, we've often said, right? You had those surround back speakers, and some people are like, "Oh yeah, when I hear them, I love them," and then some people are like, "I just couldn't care less that they're even back there." And
I kind of fall in that
depends
second
on
camp.
depends on the listener. So yeah, no, I don't think you're out to lunch on that at all. But, I mean, my personal opinion is I'd kind of just leave exactly what you have as far as configuration. That's
would
that's
too.
how I would personally lean.
Yeah, unless your people in the second row are like surround sound sounds funny, then I would consider it. But I would move the speakers to the side walls. Back when this room was under construction, he had the ceiling open for a while with insulation in the joist space, and it actually sounded great like that when he was testing on a sound system in an unfinished room. Now that the drywall is up, he's got a slap echo, so he wants some DIY absorption panels. But he feels overwhelmed when he looks up plans online. There are just so many, he doesn't know which ones are good and which ones are bad. How can we recommend? Can we recommend any specific how-to builds? If only we knew somebody who actually had zero building skills and still managed to build himself some DIY home theater panels. If only we knew somebody. Oh, wait, that was me. So on Audioholics, you can search for DIY absorbers for the less than handyman. There's 2 parts to that thing. And you will see what I did, which was I am incapable of these people who build things and they're like, they measure stuff and they cut it and they screw it together and they measure something else and cut it and screw it together and they put the 2 things together and they fit. That ain't me, Hoss. That is not my lifestyle. That is not how I roll. How I roll is I take the insulation, I cut it to the shape I want. I take the boards I'm going to put around it and I smoosh them together and then mark them right there, and then I cut. That's how I do it. I basically sandwich them in there. It shows everything about how I do it. And honestly, dude, in the dark, you can't see all the imperfections, of which there are many.
They're going to be fabric wrapped anyway, so.
Yeah. So black speaker grill cloth, which is more expensive than I remember it being, but you can get it at Joann's Fabrics or whichever fabric
You can
store is
order
close
it
to
off
you.
of Parts Express, too.
Parts Express as well, and you just kind of staple it on there. Don't pull it too tight because it'll rip on your not mitered edges.
Then we do also have our listener Rob W, who made some DIY movie poster panels. Now, you can't really use Spoonflower to print anything that's copyrighted images anymore. They have really shut down on that. What is that other place? My Fabric Designs.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if they do it either. They've definitely put on their website, "Don't send us copyrighted images." So I think they've kind of shut down that too. I mean, I don't blame any fabric printers who are like, "Yeah, don't send us copyrighted."
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
that's fair enough. That's
fair enough.
Headaches for them.
When they're ignorant about it and they do it and you take advantage of it, well, that's one thing. But when they know better, they shouldn't let you do it.
But if you're looking for alternate frame ideas and that, then that's all included in Rob W's plans too. So we'll have the link for that. It's over on our avrant.com website. And then if you're just like, I don't even want to deal with cutting my own frames. I'm fine with assembling something that's pre-cut. Well, Gick Acoustics does sell DIY frame kits as well as raw insulation and material to wrap around them. It just comes in a flat pack. You just have to screw it together, but it's already all done for you. You just have to assemble it. So that's also a less expensive alternative to fully finished panels.
Anthony asks, when you are manually calibrating your speakers and subwoofers, where does the master volume dial need to be? At 0 dB? Or do you turn the master volume until you get to 75 dB and then adjust all the speakers from there? What if your volume readout doesn't use 0 dB and negative numbers? All right, so we've run into this a couple of times before.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, and I had not experienced this until recently, most receivers I had ever interacted with, when the test tone comes out, it comes out at reference the volume level it's supposed to. That's what
that would be ideal.
But some newer receivers allow you to adjust, and like the Denon, it tells you are at negative 30 dB, so you have to adjust the volume up to 0.
Yes.
Now,
if your readout is 0 dB and then mostly negative numbers. If it is that, then set it to 0 dB, play the test tone, and adjust the trim levels until you're reading 75 dB on your SPL meter. But with the master volume at 0 dB, that's what you would do there.
Right. Now, if you have a receiver that for whatever reason, reads
all positive numbers,
all
as
positive
some of them
numbers.
do.
Some of them do. You will have to figure out what reference volume is. Now, there are two ways to do this. One of these is go into this. The first thing I would do is go into the settings of the receiver and look if you can change the readout, because Denon has the option of having it both ways.
Yeah, and it used to be called a relative volume scale to give you the 0 dB and mostly negative numbers, because that tells you how many decibels below, or there's usually a small range above 0 decibels full reference volume where you are. That's why it's reference volume. It's relative scale to 0 dB being full reference volume. So that's very handy, but some people are like, I don't like negative numbers. It doesn't make sense to me. I want it to be 0 to 100 or 0 to 80 or whatever. So they give you a positive volume scale sometimes. They sometimes call that the absolute volume scale?
I don't know.
So change it to relative if you have the option.
And if you cannot find that setting and your Google search has failed you, your Google foo is weak that day, then you want to do a search for what is reference volume on my receiver model. So Onkyo, blah, 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 reference volume setting, go.
Yeah, some of them do have it in their manual, very often in a footnote or in a troubleshooting section or an index or, a appendice or something like that. Appendix, it's very often in small print somewhere, but some of them I haven't been able to find it in the manual anywhere.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, at least in my case, my normal listening volume is around negative 20-ish. A little bit lower for some sources, a little bit higher for other sources. For Captain Marvel, it was like negative 2.5. It was almost reference volume the whole time. So, it was very, very close. But, when I went to do the test tones, it was completely obvious. Like, test tones are annoyingly loud.
Oh, yes.
When they're at reference volume, which is still 75 dB, which is still 10 dB below what actual reference volume is.
No, but it's correct because it's negative 30 from full reference, so that's fine.
So 75 dB is annoyingly loud. If you turn on your test tones and you're like, oh, there's a sound, it is not the right volume. That tells you right away. It should be very annoying. It should be very loud. So just that it should be something that you'll notice right away. All right, Robin. How much time we have left? All right. I have to go at noon, like hard.
Okay, well, we got like 15 minutes then.
Yeah. Robin, after our discussion about subwoofers for Robin's 9 bajillion cubic feet space, half of which is his family room where he has a current 7.1.2 setup, he's now back to ask about speaker upgrades. Whee! Speaker upgrades. This is the one where it's all set in a corner.
That's right.
And the speakers are like in the walls and stuff and whatever. And we thought of places to put a subwoofer. He was using his 22-year-old acoustic research speakers up front, left, center, and right, and front heights. Several of them seem to have developed problems. He could quite easily hear during the Odyssey calibration chirps that his center speaker made a click sound that none of his other speakers made. That ain't good. Well, and his front right speaker definitely sounded duller, as though there were very little treble. It could be your
Probably a blown tweeter in that speaker.
Rather than having these old speakers repaired, he's decided to upgrade and replace them all. A cherry wood finish is super important. The speakers have to match their decor, and price is a concern. He's trying to keep his budget around $2,000. He liked the looks of the Perion Varus $3,000 speakers, and they seem to get excellent reviews, but they're a bit expensive. He took a risk and bought a set of Polk RTI series speakers, one of the few options you could find that offer a cherry finish at a lower price. He loves their looks, and the obvious issues he heard with acoustic research speakers are gone, so no clicks and whatever things. And when he played some Atmos demos, he still didn't hear the sort of imaging and panning that he was expecting. Things seemed to move clearly and nicely at the back of his room in his surround and surround back speakers, but not so much up front. Do we think he can get a speaker upgrade that will thrill him and work well with his room size for $2,000 or less? So he just wants to replace the front three, right?
Well, the front three and those front heights, which I'm like, does he need those front heights?
I wouldn't replace the front heights.
I mean, they're not even
unless
that
they
high.
If they're, I wouldn't even use them. But that's just me. Does RBH, the Impression series, still have the cherry wood finish? Because they used to have that.
No, and it wasn't really cherry; it was red burl. They called it.
Whatever, close enough.
So I mean, the thing is, I'm looking at his setup in the actual photo, right? Because when he sent the diagrams, I was like, okay, that's looking pretty reasonable for a corner setup. But in the actual photo, I'm like, those front left and right speakers are pretty close together. Yeah. There's no way looking at his seating area that those are actually to the like left and right of the seating area as they appear to be in the diagram, right? And the diagram,
and his surround speakers are like super wide compared to where he is. Yeah, there's a lot more distance because they're on side walls and stuff like that.
The reason that pan doesn't fully work around, especially to the right-hand side, is that your surround right speaker is like way far away from your front right speaker. Like really far away. And your front right speaker is actually, front right, left and right are quite close together. And I'm thinking that the imaging panning stuff that you're talking about is more speaker positioning than it is the speakers themselves. I wouldn't be quick to blame the speakers themselves.
And the height speakers are about 2.5 to 3 feet above the actual speakers, which is way lower. I gotta be
honest with you, I would just nix those front heights. I don't think they're doing anything.
Okay, looking at your the picture that I'm looking at here with the front heights and whatever, I would take the front left speaker and move it forward and to the left,
closer to the
fireplace.
Sure.
And then the front right speaker, I would move it forward and to the right so that it is
closer to the piece of furniture to the right.
Whatever that piece of furniture is right there.
Spread them apart
to start with.
Yeah.
And then I would unplug the height speakers
and take them down.
And take them away.
Yes. Yeah. Which now frees up more money because now you're spending $2,000 on 3 speakers instead of $2,000 on 5.
Which might get you the Imperial.
Well, it gets you close. They're on sale right now. So I think the towers are normally $1,250 each, and I think they're down to $1,000 each. So you could get the tower pair at the moment for the $2,000 you're looking to spend. The center would be more. You'd be going over budget for that.
The center is also freaking huge.
The center is not small, that Aperion center. It's a nice design in that when you're just looking at the picture, it doesn't look absurdly large.
I could actually show it to you. I could show you the Varus, the original one, and it's not, the other one's not that much bigger.
It hasn't changed. No, it really hasn't changed.
It is very big, and it is quite heavy too. So your little shelf that you've got your speaker on right now might not cut it. So and by might, because that looks like a store-bought like shelf, I'm pretty sure it's not going to cut it for what you've got here.
Well, actually, coming up later, I've got talking about other suggestions. So I'll leave it for that question there. But I mean, I don't think the $2,000 budget is a gigantic problem. The room size, it's more about the seating distance than it is about the room size for your speakers. And as far as the panning stuff goes in that, I think it's more to do with setup. And I agree with Tom. Spread them out.
So the one manufacturer I'm going to I'm going to suggest but not recommend because of their options as far as the different wood finishes is Axiom. Axiom Audio has tons of options. Unfortunately, they make straight up garbage center channel speakers.
Yeah.
I mean, they are.
I mean, that VP 160 is okay, but that is monstrous, and I think eats up your entire budget all by itself now because Axiom's prices are insane. So,
yeah, and they have gotten to the point where they are seriously overpriced.
Yeah.
Especially if you get a custom finish on them.
Oh yeah.
You're talking. You can't even get one of their basic tower speakers for this.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened over there. It's a shame.
Yeah,
used to love
it's a
them.
shame. They used to be a budget leader, and they're no longer that. But lots of speaker manufacturers have maybe not the option, but you can call them and say, listen, I really want there to be this. I'll pay extra for it. Is that possible? They may say yes. They may say no. You can try that. I mean, there's... But I mean, black, dude. What's wrong with black? Your options become so much, and your prices actually come so much better when you can just get something that's black and maybe a little glossy.
There is that, but that's okay. Yeah. I'm okay with limiting it to this because there's still good choices.
So he asked, do we think the Polk RTI speakers are just lacking, or is his corner set up with the rear ports of his speakers close to the walls that are limiting us out? No, it's just I think they're too close together. Yeah. I don't think the ports, they're not even that close to the wall.
No,
really.
The ports are fine.
The ports are fine.
I
think they're just too close together.
None of this is the back porting. No.
So do we have any recommendations for speakers that would check all the boxes for him? He's concerned that he's going to tumble down a rabbit hole of trial and error since he hasn't had the experience of hearing a ton of excellent home theaters and isn't even sure what it ought to sound like. Well, you know it when it sounds bad, so you'll know it when it sounds good. And the panning thing that you're really... Let's just be honest here and reasonable, I think. You have a very compromised placement.
Yeah.
That's just the fact.
I mean, actually, if you could take the TV and the speakers out of the corner and move it to like the way the seating is actually facing, right? So that the fireplace is genuinely on the left and the TV and the speakers are just on the flat front wall where your surround back speakers are facing and where your surround left and right speakers are actually to the sides. I mean, if that's possible, then now you've just got a squared up setup, and that panning should work a lot better if you want to do that.
I think he's in love with this subwoofer in the corner behind the TV, and that's the problem. You can leave the subwoofer over there.
You could. You could hide it behind a diagonal piece of furniture, covering it in the corner like your TV is now.
Take that thing that's to the right of your home theater, put that in front of the subwoofer.
Front of the sub.
And
put the TV where that thing is.
And suddenly your options are, much easier to deal with.
And your panning and imaging sounds correct.
I have to scroll back down. Do we have any recommendations for speakers that would check all the boxes for him? Is concerned. We already said that.
Yeah.
So what other speakers do we think? So we already kind of talked about it.
I think the Aperians would be a real good choice. It would be a little bit over your budget. I think they'd be a real good choice. Now, the other one I'm going to mention to you, because I especially like them for when you do have a larger room size than that, are HSU, Shu. They're horn-loaded speakers, which they do offer in, now it's a rosewood finish, which is a little darker than a cherry.
Do not be afraid of bookshelf speakers, please. You do not need towers.
You can get what they call their center speaker. You can absolutely use that vertically. So that it looks that much closer to being tower. Yes, you'd still want a stand of some sort for it. It is not a tower speaker.
This man is not sitting that far away from these speakers.
No. But I mean, if you just want that look and that output capability, you get 3 of the centers. Now, that will easily fit your budget if the rosewood finish is close enough, right? Like I say, it's a little darker of a wood finish than cherry. So have a look at that, but that I would consider. Now, PSB... they do have their Imagine series speakers that do come in a cherry finish. They're about the same price as the Aperians, though, so I really don't think you're looking at a cost savings there.
Right.
But
that's what the cherry wood, especially if it has to be cherry wood in particular.
I'm hoping the HSUs are close enough because that checks all the boxes while easily fitting your price point.
So we appreciate our subwoofer advice from last episode. Based on SVS's advice to him, he auditioned an SB3000, but he did so by leaving his current DefTech PF1500 sealed 15-inch 250-watt sub. That is not enough amplifier power. In the corner behind his TV and putting the SB3000 in the opposite corner and then comparing how things sounded with the SB3000 on versus off. He heard an improvement that way with the SB3000 on, but not enough to justify the price. Just so you understand, you had 2 subs playing down to about 35 hertz, maybe. And then after that, you only had the SB3000 playing below that. Yeah. So you had 2 subs for some of the the range, and then you had a whole bunch of bass that you never had before below that, but it was coming out of one sub, and the other sub, if it did anything, was adding distortion and noise and not adding sound.
And even in the range where they were both playing, one of them was capable of playing much louder than the other.
Right.
The new one can play louder.
So you may have been really only hearing, for the most part, just the one SP.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's unfortunate. The PB3000 that we suggested more highly is enormous.
It is.
I think that we said that, but it could just fit in that corner behind his TV. He'd really prefer to keep a subwoofer there as it's a practical location. Potential location for a second sub would be the other corners or to the right of his TV. No, that's like literally right next to the subwoofer. The opening into this room, the opposite the fireplace, is 16 feet wide, so it's not the entire width of the room, but it does open to another 4,500 cubic feet, so about equal volumes of air on either side of the opening. He can't see himself keeping the SB3000. Would it be worth trying a PB3000? If so, since he only wants to keep the PB3000 in the corner behind his TV, where should he put his PF1500 as go as a second sub, or should he even just keep a second sub at that point? You should get rid of that thing.
If you got a PB3000, get rid of the PF1500. Yeah. That's a
or the
SB3000.
Mismatch. If you get anything that we recommend, you should get rid of the Def Deck. The Def Deck, no offense, it's a fine little sub for what it is completely incapable of doing anything positive.
I mean, it is a 15-inch drive. We shouldn't say it's completely incapable, but it's not up to...
That thing's 250 watts, pushing a 15-inch driver in a 9,000 cubic foot room.
Yes, in the 9,000
you got to sit on the
space,
thing in order to really
problem.
get some decent bass out of it.
I mean, I'm still wanting you to get cylinders. That's what I really want you to get, is a cylinder.
Yeah, he doesn't want the cylinders. He wants to hide his subs.
I know, it wants to hide the subs. And I mean, given what he described of how this opening works with the additional 4,500 cubic feet on the other side of the opening, we can't see it in any of the pictures, but we understand what's going on there. I'm back to a cylinder on the left of the opening, a cylinder on the right of the opening. That ideally is what I would do here. But for this room size, we'd be talking, PC 4000s?
Yeah.
And that's expensive. That's getting pretty pricey at this point. Yeah. So I can understand that not being the case. Now, a PB3000, that's a pretty good choice output-wise for this volume of air. Having it in the corner will help. Will you have uniformity across your seats? No idea.
Unlikely, but no, we can't say
not
for sure.
Utterly impossible, because this is an open space, a much more open
your
space.
Second room or your back room there acts as almost like a bass strap.
But I mean, I'm still in favor of going back to this idea of if you could move that TV over to just be on the flat wall, still keep the sub in the corner, that's fine. Put a piece of furniture in front of it, hide it, that's all fine. But yeah, if you got the PB3000, ditch the Def Tech. And just go with.
If you get the SB the 3000, ditch the Def Deck. I mean, just ditch the Def Deck, and there's, like I said, I mean, you're going to the big leagues here. We're talking about not just putting speakers in a room to make noise, because that's what surround sound is. We're now getting the proper speakers for the proper room placed properly.
I mean, the PB, we did suggest it would be the right choice, because like the SB3000 has about the same output as a PB2000, and we wouldn't make a PB2000 our top recommendation for 9,000 cubic feet. It is not capable of pressurizing that much air. It's not capable of displacing that much air down to 20 hertz to full reference volume, hitting that sound pressure level. It's just not capable of it, and neither is the SB3000. If you want the type of upgrade where you're like, oh man, I'm getting the 20 hertz bass that I never got before, the PB3000 is the way to get that.
Yeah. And if we can get them to move that TV, I think we'll be... Yeah,
that's all your imaging and panning problems solved.
Panning problems, and then just move that piece of furniture so that covers the subwoofer in the corner, and I think you're good.
So left on our list, we have David F., FOMO Josh, Anthony B., different Anthony.
What does he want now? What does he want to buy now?
We had a different Anthony B. than the one from question 13, a second Anthony B. And Stephen W., who wrote to us from the UK. Carl also wrote to us with some questions, but I wrote back to him asking for more clarification, because I didn't want to listen to 2.5 hours of other people talking to find out what he was talking about. So, Carl, tell us what the heck they said. Summarize.
Oh, that
for
was the
us,
podcast
please.
one?
Yes.
That was the podcast one. Oh, listen to this and tell us what you think. No. All right. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank David and Stephen for going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and giving us a PayPal donation. We also want to thank our 82 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yeah, David, Stephen, thank you very much for those PayPal donations, and patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you would like to sign up as an automatic donor every month, and thanks to our 82 patrons over there.
Yes, and we want to thank, first of all, not thank, but we want to say, if you want your podcast, your question answered on this podcast, talking is hard. If you want your question, your AV or home theater question answered on this podcast, email us at question@avrant.com. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AV Rant.
Now go out and listen to something.